Hello and welcome to the Bricecast. This is episode 13. I am, of course, Bryce, and we'll be bringing you everything we need to in Call of Duty Esports news. But I am joined by a wonderful person this time around, and a person who I'm sure a lot of you want to talk to and ask questions about. It's Looney. Looney, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. Doing great.
Awesome.
Back home, enjoying this off season, and ready to compete though. Ready for this beta.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll get to that. There's lots of things to talk about that you've been doing recently, but first of all, just a quick bit of housekeeping to get out of the way. I apologise for having to Photoshop your head onto another person's body. Obviously, there's no Seattle Surge team shoot has gone down yet, and I thought, well, it's either I just black out your T-shirt or I try to Photoshop it bad. It's but that's Octane if you couldn't tell whose body you're modelling.
My teammate, he's
Yeah.
buff.
I think you look great. I think it's great. But I just thought I'd clear that up because Parasite saw it straight away, instantly.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man,
I saw the tweet.
I can't believe he's seen it so quickly. But yeah, let's kind of get straight into it then, because one of the big things we have to talk about is you have joined Seattle, right? You are now onto this roster. You are playing with a very talented lineup. But there is, objectively, I would say, this is a team with a troubled past. How do you feel about, what are your first thoughts on kind of joining Seattle then?
Yeah. So when I got benched on Toronto, I had already kind of talked to Seattle because that was kind of an option to try to join when Enable was benched, because Enable was, I think, the first, I want to say, benched, and then I think Aches followed, and then I followed. So I had reached out to, I think that line of communication was just open the whole way through. It was mostly with Select, actually, that I was talking to throughout the MW season. And then I talked to Sam for a bit during the MW season. And then I told him, "Oh, listen, if you guys, whatever ends up happening going into the new year, if you're down a team, hit me up." And then I think it was like a couple days after champs, maybe I hit him up and I was like, "Hey, so what's good? What's team?" And then he's just like, "Yeah, let me just weigh out all my options." He was very transparent, which is what I appreciated from him. It
Yeah.
just showed kind of matured from back when I teamed with him in Black Ops 3. He was just like, "Listen, these are my options. You're not on the roster. Like I'm not setting you there yet. So obviously do your own thing, try to find other spots. But if I do want you on the team, I'll let you know." And it's kind of how it happened. He just ended up hitting me up. He's like, "Listen, I'm down to team with you. Let's do it."
Okay, I mean, that's kind of a cool story because, and like I said, there was a lot to cover here, and I feel like we need to at least talk about the Toronto and Seattle situation before we go into everything else, hot topic wise, in your history.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's not been a real thing in Call of Duty history, as you know, to be benched but still with a team. Usually it's you get dropped and
Yeah.
you go somewhere else, right? But you had that unique situation where you were benched. How was that for you? Just feeling wise, because it's such a unique situation for you in your career to kind of go in that, well, I'm here, but I'm stuck here now.
Yeah, so I explained on my stream, but me getting benched was majorly my fault. So it was kind of me learning from that. Obviously known as Dagger Dan or whatever, and being hot headed and stuff like that. So I
Yeah,
did overreact off a play, um, caused the scene in the facility, because at the time we were going out of facility, right? There's
yeah,
pre-COVID, so we're practicing at a team facility. I popped off in the practice room. I think ownership was there and stuff like that. They kind of heard all the fuss, and then the following day, uh, we were supposed to practice, and then all of a sudden we uh we got messaged on our in our group chat like, "All right, all scrims canceled for A team and B team, obviously, because we have 10 players."
yeah,
We're like, "Oh, like what the hell is going on? Like, why are both teams getting canceled?" So
yeah,
then that's when I got a call from Marty, who was still with Overactive Media at the time,
yeah.
and he was just like, "Yeah, we want to switch up the environment. The way you handle the situation or whatever was not the way we want to like conduct our team and have our team ran." So I was moved to the bench. I was under the impression though, because then I talked to like ownership, that I was gonna kind of have like a road to get back onto the starting roster. They're like, "All right, we
Yeah.
want you to practice with the B team, show up every single day." Again, this is pre-COVID, so it's like we had 2 rooms for the A team and the B team.
Yeah.
Like we're just gonna come in, practice with the B team, go hard, show them what it takes to get from the B team to the A team. So I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like I just have to head down, grind, and I'll be back. Like I have to learn from my mistakes. Like I said, it was majority my fault. I was like, just learn from it and just get back in the starting roster. And that's I think where my frustration came. It just felt like I wasn't actually able to ever get back on the starting roster. It was kind of like they were trying to set example out of me. Like you
Uh-huh.
mess up, you're benched. That's it. Because it felt because I went. I think arguably I went the hardest. It was streamed. I streamed all my scrims. I think I went the hardest in the B team. That's where I also had a learning period. Kind of like what you said. Like how did it feel? It was weird because you're on a team. It's the first time
Yeah.
I'm ever on a team that we don't have a goal collectively.
Okay.
Individually, we all have goals, right?
Yeah.
Get on the A team. But as a team collectively, it wasn't like we lost the map and like we really wanted to get better at that map. It was just like, okay, we lost the map, whatever. Like we would talk, but like we never get into heated arguments because again, the B team's not gonna play a match. Like those 5 players were not about to play in a CDO sanctioned match. Like and then we couldn't compete in challengers. So it was that's the atmosphere that I had to adjust to early
Okay.
on. Like I said, I was still vocal. I was still trying to get better because I don't like losing. I'm a competitor. I don't, and especially like full ego intended. I don't want to go into scrims against amateurs and lose. Like
Yeah.
I'm a professional player. I need to show that I'm a professional player. I should be coming into these scrims and just like having my way with them type thing.
Yeah.
Um, so, and then the thing, the weird part about it too is a lot of people, a lot of top AM teams like Atlanta Academy, Aggies team and stuff like that. They kind of like knew that we weren't going as hard as like another top AM team. So it was also hard to get like real competitive scrims. Like at times it would just play people and just run through them.
Okay.
And we're not even a team. So that's
Okay.
kind of where my adjustment period was just playing on a B team and not having a collective goal, just having individual goals where it's just like all of us obviously just wanted to play on the A team. We didn't
Yeah.
care to win the scrims. We just wanted to prove um that we deserve to be in the A team. And like an example of that, which I don't blame him, was like Brack, for example, right?
Yeah.
He came in, and I had mentioned this to Marty too. When he was making a 10-man roster, I'm like, okay, if you're doing a 10-man roster, make sure the B team has roles like the A team. What
Uh-huh.
happened was he didn't pick up a main AR. I wanted Goonjar to be on our B team. I was like, he's Canadian, he's local. Because the last one to get picked up was Mayhem, which
Yeah.
so I was like, listen, at this point, we need a main AR
Uh-huh.
on the B team if you really want it to work. And then he didn't pick up Goon, he picked up Mayhem. But then they forced Brack into a main AR role, which he's not. He's a flex. So
Right. Yeah. No, no, no. I'm with you.
put
I'm with
him
you.
in, yeah, put him in such a weird spot. And again, where it comes to like it was an individual game, he would purposely just try to rack up the most hill time on the B team and just be like, so then he can go to like Marky B and be like, hey, look, I'm a hill player. This is what you guys need. Then he doesn't hop the hill. Like it was just like I said, it's just a weird atmosphere. I learned a lot, obviously, to go into this team, but it was just weird because it was like I said, it's a team, but it was more having individual goals and a collective goal.
Yeah. I mean, not gonna lie, that is a lot to unpack, and I've got so many follow up questions for you because it's a really fascinating scenario for me.
Yeah.
Because start of the year, one of the things I did talk about, and like full disclosure aside, right? Like I obviously know people on some of these franchises, Toronto especially, right? I
Yeah.
know Marky, I know their GM, I know even Marty, right? Um,
Marty? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I said start of the year, I said, look, a 10-man roster is a very interesting way to come into this season. It has some drawbacks. I think one of the drawbacks I highlighted, which sounds like it may have become apparent, you didn't say it, but it says it may have become apparent in your talking about the A and B team, is a 10-man roster with 2 full squads requires more coaching and more staff. Because,
Yeah.
like you said, right? If they've got to watch, a player's, trying to get more hill time, or how do I get back? How do I progress? How do I make my case? Well, you don't have the staff to watch what you're doing, Looney, or go through all your VODs, or actually give your team a direction. Because I think one of the criticisms leveled at Toronto during all this is, what is the B team doing? Because obviously, Challengers was not set up to let substitute teams fly. Essentially, like there was no way to balance how good those B team players are unless you got a scrim against a pro team or you subbed in for one of these scrims. And he said, how do I get back to the A team? And if
Yeah.
you don't have that, like who are you talking to, right? You go in there and you try and who's my coach? Because if he's not here, he's probably watching the A team, which he should
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
It's kind of mad to me. But let's start at the beginning of your kind of talk there. You said about an adjustment for you, right? You held your hands up. You said it's my fault. First of all, very big thing to do. A lot of players wouldn't do that. But the growth you kind of show in terms of like, look, I need to conduct myself in a different way moving. Do you think that's franchising that's kind of brought on this slightly different atmosphere? Because obviously in the past people could probably have outbursts and it wouldn't be a problem, but your first outburst or an outburst of yours has basically changed your career trajectory a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it also had to do with just being in house, like being
Yeah,
there. Obviously, if that pop off happens online, I assume we just get over it, get off the team speak, and that's it. But being in person with the whole team, and like I
yeah,
said, ownership was there, so they can listen into that, and stuff like that. Because back on Splice, we had like one of the most toxic environments I've ever been in. But like,
yeah,
other than like obviously dropping accuracy, like that was it. Like we just like we're grown men. Because even afterwards, right? Afterwards, he told me not to tell the team, but obviously, like, I'm not gonna keep that a secret from the team. Everyone wanted to know what was going on. Like me, Bant, and Methods all went to the facility, and we're just
yeah,
like, "What the hell's going on?" They didn't tell us. They're just in a meeting room. I texted Marty because I had woken up to a phone call that I missed, and then he's just like, "I'm in a meeting right now. I'll get back to you later." And I'm just like, "All right, this is like serious. Like, we're not getting answers. What the hell's going on?" And
yeah,
they only told me they didn't want to tell the team because I think the next day they were gonna have a meeting to tell them or whatever in facility. But I went to like Ben and Cam's apartment was like downstairs, like right under me and Nick's. So I went down there and I'm like, listen, I'm benched, and then they're all like freaking out, like, why? Like, we don't care that you did that. None of us care. Like,
uh-huh,
did that. We're grown men. Like, you yelled, whatever. We're over it. And who I yelled at was Zinni, and he's the one that was saying like, yeah, dude, I don't care. But it wasn't like I said, it wasn't player. None of them wanted to bench me at the time, at least. I mean, obviously, it ended up working out for them, but at the time, they didn't want me to bench me. It was just a management decision where, like you said, that's where franchising comes in. I think if it's just previous titles, I've done that millions of times. Um, so I think franchise model does it, and then just being there, like I said, because um, obviously they had they're listening right there.
no, like I said, it's one of those things. I think obviously I would never say, you deserve to be benched because I wasn't there. I don't know the scenario, right? But at the same time, obviously, it's something you've clearly learned, right? You even said, holding my hands up, I shouldn't have done it, which I think is very big of you. But here's the thing, like in this new world of professionalism, and we're moving into the franchise era, and so on and so forth. Um, do you think that there is still teething issues? Do you think that there are problems still inherent with the model, or maybe even it's not fully as developed as you would like in certain areas yet?
Yeah, so you kind of touched on it, and I think it was only like specific to our team, but
Yeah,
one of the big issues, like you said, was for the B team. They're like, who the hell's watching us play? Especially when we're playing in facility, right? Like
yeah,
we're playing in the facility, they can't stream, so they can't go back and watch VODs. Um, they were in such a small spot. Like my office here was bigger than what they played in. Like it was just like a table, 5 stations, and that's you had like one person that can stand behind each station, and that's it. That's how much room they had. So it's not like you could have put another PC in there to just record like we had. We had a bigger room, so Mark was just behind us in like a corner where he can record our VODs, but no one can record their VODs. So that was an issue too, where it was like, hello, like how do you guys know we're popping off? And then like you said, we're
yeah.
understaffed. It was only Mark. Dom's obviously our GM, and she when it switched to online and we started like because yeah, then COVID hit.
Yeah,
Dom would watch and she would just record, but that's all she was doing. She was just recording, like
yeah.
which helped. But at that point too, we were personally streaming, so it didn't really matter. And then Mark would like come in and watch us like every probably like once a week, maybe two. And then when they picked up Ryan Flux,
Yeah.
they would alternate on who watches the A team, who watches the B team. But like you said, I feel like for that, like Ryan and Mark could focus on the A team. Like both of them should have their full focus. Like the focus is to win championships. So I think that's kind of where if they're not gonna do it this time, obviously, but for it to work, you did need to have the proper staff and have like a second coach strictly for the B team, kind of a guy that knows how to scout talent and knows, all right, this guy is playing right. Because it was split attention between Mark and Ryan on us
Yeah.
when I got benched and we moved to online.
Yeah, I can 100% understand that, because not only that, right, but coaching is obviously not just watching you guys, but also the very definition of it is coaching you, right? So as
Yeah.
a player, you should be being developed regardless of what team you're on. right? You're an asset. You're playing for the team. You signed a contract. They're paying you regardless of what team you're on, right? So if you're on
Yeah.
there, you're still playing on the B team, but nobody then is saying, "Hey, can you improve in this area? Can you do this in the next area? Here's our S&D. Maybe we need to put you in." But there's no context of that. They only get to see a snapshot of you in a specific scrim, which we know can be subjective depending on who you're playing. If you're going up against a counterpart a player in the team who's picking you apart that series, but against everybody else you've been frying, or
Yeah.
maybe it's a specific map set, or you're trying something because it's scrims, or like you said, lack of defined roles could mean that your S&D is suffering because nobody's really putting together a big game plan. It's just you five who, roster changes and stuff. It's difficult for you to shine. And I think that was one of my biggest critiques of challenges this year is, well, first of all, these two-way contracts everyone's supposed to be on. You only have two per team, and we don't know who's supposed to play where, and it was difficult for people to kind of gather in, but it's weird. Go on, I see you had a point there, go on.
No, yeah. Well, the thing about the two-way is I think it was like franchise dependent on which franchise got the like information on how that worked. But that was a problem that we ran into early on. When we went, I think we went in October for our reveal,
Yeah,
for our brand reveal, take pictures and stuff like that. At the time, the starting roster was supposed to be me, Brack, Methods, and the Spaniards.
yeah.
So classic, and I think Bant were the first to like mention it. They're like, "Hey, like, what are we supposed to do? Like, if we can't play challengers, what are we gonna do?" Like, so they were pushing to like get two-way contracts, or and then that got into a whole like argument and like debate where it's just like, are we gonna give two? Because like you said, only two of the five would have been able to do that two-way contracts to play in challengers. So it would have kind of like screwed the other three. So then ultimately they decided no, all five of you guys are not gonna be on two-way contracts, or none of you guys are gonna be on two-way contracts.
Yeah,
And
which is insane.
yeah, exactly. So it's just like, because at least like Atlanta had an academy team, but they had Tom Gravity and Journey play. So
Yeah.
it's like Toronto has 10 players and they don't have anyone playing in Challenger. So like I said, that also just off the rip put like a bad vibe in the B team. Like, what are we supposed to be doing for a year? And what it turns out, Brack, Mayhem, and Lucky just like got paid for a year to do absolutely nothing. Like essentially. Like
Yeah, no, 100%.
like Mayhem helped. Mayhem did try to help the A team. He was very vocal with us and stuff like that. And he obviously made the best out of his situation. But it was just a shitty situation. And kind of to touch on what you said about like screenshots and if they take screenshots and go based off like one stream, that kind of was happened when we went into our boot camp in early December. We went into
Yeah.
a boot camp, and going into it again, I thought the starting roster was going to be me, Methods, Brack, and the Spaniards. And luckily, we had like 5 NA, 5 EU. So they were the 5 EU players were obviously streaming in Europe before we all moved to Toronto.
Yeah.
Or we in December, it was kind of weird. A lot of people feel like they got shafted, which I don't blame them. Like Lucky being one, because we're just mixing in rosters, playing scrims, and like some teams will play a lesser team, so someone's gonna shine, and then Lucky or someone will play against like a Dallas Empire, and obviously like his stats aren't gonna be unreal. And he was saying that we were putting him in a role he wasn't comfortable in, so he's not performing. So we're like, yeah, I don't think Lucky's the right choice. And then that's kind of when Cammy came in. Like, no, Cammy's been fine. We want to play with Cammy. So that also was just like the lack of time that we had to like decide on a 5 man. Because like I said, I thought our five was set for at least like the first event or two. But then Mark, like right before the boot camp, like, no, we're trying stuff. I don't want to put like all our eggs in one basket and just hope this roster works.
Yeah.
We might as well take advantage of this boot camp. But I was like, all right, that's fair. And we tried a whole bunch of variations. I think we had like 3, 4 days of streaming. Like you said, like depending on what the schedule was, one day you might play a lesser team, so someone's in the shine, or like, yo, he's nasty, we need to put him. And then someone else played against a tougher team, didn't have an even shot at that starting roster. So that was kind of shitty in the very beginning too. It's just like lack of time, and we made a decision. It kind of worked out, I guess. We went 1-1 at Minnesota, and then obviously fell back-to-back events. But that was also just a weird situation, which
No, I mean, in fact, you brought some points I didn't really consider there, Looney, because I didn't really think about. I'm sure many people haven't. That point of that second team. Well, first of all, obviously you have no goal to go forward, but if you guys are obviously competing for spots, right? That is the entire idea of the B team. You are competing for spots. So if you don't have the roles to mirror the A team, then obviously you may be in a role you're uncomfortable with. So how do you compete for a spot? If you're playing for a main AI, you're either forced into it if you want it or not. And you could beat out the A team. Could have a great player. You could be the best player on the B team, but your equivalent player on the A team is still better.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I could be on a different franchise team. And I'm hoping this year challenges changes because, sorry, I've had a few critiques of it, and I want to see it, especially with more players in there this year. There are way more pros and challengers now going forward, and we don't know exactly what's happening with the sub spots and who's playing where yet. But I do think it needs to be seen as just it needs to be given more precedence, right? Because like you said, how do I justify my career? How do I get back to an A team? How do I get back to a franchise? Fortunately, you've done it, right? You've gone into Seattle this year, but there must have been a few thoughts in your mind like, oh crap, I could be one of these players left out in the cold.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had my thoughts where I'm like, if I'm not gonna get on a franchise team, do I jump right in? Obviously, with my like reputation of being a smart player, do I just start jumping into the coaching market? Do I play challengers? Like, um, a lot. I think Nameless just touched on this with the whole age thing, right? It's just a lot of the times the reason players retire, which I was like on that line, on that path, was financial decisions. I have a house, I have a mortgage, I have bills to pay. Can I just go into challengers? Probably not get a monthly salary. And if
Yeah.
it is, it's probably like $1,000 or whatever it is. I don't know what challengers we're getting last year. That's not really enough to like live off of. I'm just gonna probably just chip away into my savings that I've made, and if it doesn't work out, then what? So it's just tough. I think luckily for some of these pro players that might get left out is they are in like a financial stable decision where I think most will go into challengers and most are confident in like betting in yourself, right? Some of these franchises might underperform, and that's when I get the call up.
Yeah.
Which is another conversation is like, do they sign a sub spot? Like if you're, I think I heard Slack talked about it. If I'm a sub for, let's say, LA Gorillas, and I don't know if Seattle underperforms or any team underperforms,
Can't jump
and
in.
they is like, how do I? Yeah, I'm gonna have to get bought out of my LAG contract, and then so at that point, someone else is probably gonna have to take that spot. So I'm probably best just not signing with a franchise and just I'm betting on myself that someone is gonna underperform and I'll be free. So it's no hassle signing me. So
That's
it's
that's
it's a
insane.
tough.
Insane, man. Like the fact that there's that players on the cusp, right? Because there could be pro players who just haven't made a team for whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
They now have to make a choice. Do I take a minimum contract to be in a sub spot, regardless of the team? Because you could go into a great team and that actually makes it worse for you, right? If you signed up to
Yeah.
like the
Atlanta
Empire,
phase.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like you know you
You're not
probably
gonna
not
get
get
called up.
But I then have that money in my pocket, right? It's a guaranteed contract.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's
I
not guaranteed now.
I
Contracts
basically
aren't guaranteed.
yeah.
but it's to your point. It's just I have some income. I have
Yeah.
some money coming in to make it more of a safe spot to play in the challengers, which I think AMs will probably sign more than pros because pros, if they have been smart with their money, obviously Slack has earned a lot of money. So a player like Slack, I can see not signing, but like a player like I don't know Sibulins, depending on his financial situation, he would probably want the minimum just to, especially if you're in a situation too where you have to um, convince your parents that this is a viable career, right? You're
Yeah.
gonna want that money. You're gonna want that monthly money to show them like, hey, like I can do this.
Yeah.
Um,
I
it's I
often
think it's like player dependent
yeah.
on what they're gonna do.
I often worry, and I think I covered this before about players and their money, right? I've definitely spoken on this a few times. It still worries me because salaries obviously are very high in some countries, and last year they were high, right?
Oh yeah,
It worries me that some players don't think of it still because they'll splurge, right? And I understand splurge, right? We've all done it. But it worries me when I see a player just go, right, yeah, I'm going to get all this drip. I'm going to get all this stuff to flex on the timeline. And I'm
yeah.
sitting there going, for the majority of it, you don't need it. And it's easy to say that, right?
Oh
But
yeah,
when you have an income as a pro player, it is usually higher than the average income of whatever country you're from. And it is
yeah,
very easy to spend this money. And you always think more is going to come. Now, if you're a player like, I don't know, Crim, for instance, who spent 20 grand on night vision goggles, well, Crim has got way more capital. That is a very low thing. But for some of these players, you know, they may have earned 300k, 200k, 100k last year, and be like, oh, this is loads of money. Well, that's loads of money right up until it stops coming in, and then you realise, well, that 5 grand I spent on something, that's actually a significant chunk of money I could have for the future, right? It's great
Yeah.
to have these things, and I do worry, and I would love to see, you know, a financial advisor that didn't rip off players come into this and say, hey, look, if you live frugally and just compete, like if you're all about competition, just compete, save your money. If you need to buy upgrades to compete, PCs and stuff, very viable to buy, right? It's an
Yeah,
asset for you.
that's yeah.
But some of these other things, some of these players could have walked away with a house at the end of the year with some of these contracts, like a property to invest in, and just say, hey, my money's good now. Like even if my
Yeah.
career absolutely tanks, which it could, we've seen very good players drop
Yeah.
out of a pro league and maybe not get back. You know, even if it tanks and I have to go do something else with my life, at least I've been smart with it, right? At least
Yeah.
I have something.
I think
Um,
uh I think something that helped is being employees now.
yeah,
Because when you were just on a monthly salary, right? Whether it was 5, 6, 7, whatever the amount was monthly, you get that in full. But a lot of players mentally aren't thinking half of this is not mine. At the end
yeah,
of the year, I'm gonna pay a good chunk of cash to taxes and stuff. So that was like a problem too, which I think that now it helps players when it comes to splurging. Like, all right, well, it's already taxed. The money I'm getting is actually mine, or whatever the case may be. So it's just like, wow, instead of making 10K, I actually only get 5,000 of that. Like, but when you got that 10K flat a month, you're just like, oh yeah, I can spend half of this and I'll be good.
yeah.
Like, I think that helped a lot. I don't think a lot of pro players. I'm not sure, but I always made sure that I had that money just ready to pay at the end of the year for taxes, which would be it was a lot of cash. So
Like I said, it's very easy, players, right? Because here's the thing, right? And every player does it pretty much. You go on the
yeah,
timeline, you get something new, you show it off, and then you go to an event, and everybody's wearing nice gear. They've got, you know, they go to fancy
yeah,
restaurants. You're like, well, I'm now a player. I want to do these same things. Well,
yeah,
some of these players have been playing for a decade, and they've earned an absolute ridiculous amount of money. And I do find some of the ones who are obviously, you know, the biggest stars in and around, they actually talk less about their money as time goes on. Like they don't show it out. They don't really worry about that sort of stuff because they know it's all going into properties and stuff.
yeah.
Um, but it's mad. Let's change topic now because I want to talk about your
Yep,
new team. Right, you're going to
yep.
Seattle Surge. Obviously you've come out of Canada. You've come into Seattle. How much are you looking forward to playing with this team, right? You got Gunless, Octane, and Pristini with you. That is a stacked roster for Surge now, and obviously lots to do for Surge to kind of rebuild their brand this year.
Yeah, well, for me, I think our Rise team in World War II was a mistake to break up. Obviously, we had the top 16 finish, which is just like a recency thing. Obviously, that was the last placing we put up, but before that, we were in 3 straight finals, right?
Yeah,
Like a lot of, I know a lot of like Optic fans and a lot of fans hate it that we're already trying to call ourselves a dynasty and like we're on that track, but we were like, regardless of the top 16 finish, like we dominated World War II in like the beginning of the year, and then it was like TK dominated the start, we dominated the middle, and then TK like pretty much dominated the end. But like Optic didn't win their first champs together. Like so,
yeah,
just because we got a top 16, it wasn't like our dynasty was in a like it's just chalked. If we continued into Black Ops 4 with those four and picked up whoever it would have been, we would have probably eyeballed like Kenny and stuff like that and ran through Black Ops 4, we could have been on track to be that dynasty. So I think it was a mistake to break up, but it was just like a recency thing that wound that was fresh and we reacted on it.
yeah.
So teaming with Pierce again is I'm very, very excited for. Obviously, he was considered top two, him and Kenny in World War II. So to be teaming with him again, I'm looking forward to it. I know everyone has their thoughts. Oh, he's gonna blow it up. He's gonna do
Well,
this. He's gonna do
I've
that.
got to ask you. I've got to ask you about this, right? Because here's the thing about Seattle Surge: unbelievable names on this team. Very, very talented roster, right? Nobody
Yeah,
can contest that, and anybody does is clearly a moron. The question has been asked, and I'm sure you just kind of try to address it there, but I want to get it
yeah,
out in the open and get your real feelings on it. The criticism leveled against Surge this year are it has players that have had previous history of either being combative or passionate, you could call it, or hot headed. like people are worried about, you obviously said last
Yeah.
year you had a bubble, Gunless, Pristini's has had it. Octane obviously had his mental bit the last bit of the year, not really like passionate, but you clearly tell it was just memeing the timeline. People are worried, right? People are worried
Yeah.
about,
No,
is
that's a
this
fair.
team chemistry going to hold up if you have a couple of bad events?
Yeah. So for me, I think me and Gunless teaming again is kind of the way we teamed with on Rise. So he obviously got dropped off phase off IW champs.
Yeah.
He went on to team with Echo Fox, which is pretty much a scrap team that ended up being good. It was like an eighth team, I guess, with like because Vicento had been dropped by us by Rise. Pierce got dropped. I think Saints got dropped by LG. And then who was their full Assault? I think Assault. I don't know what happened there. I know Aches went to EG. You can just say he got dropped or he got left out.
Yeah.
And then they ended up dropping him after the Montreal event, that extra like pro point event. He always talked about he got dropped on Christmas Eve. So he was handed to me with like a chip on his shoulder, ready to prove. And I think it's kind of the same thing. Obviously, with what happened with the Huntsman, again, it's like handing me a guy that's just hungry. And we obviously worked well in World War II. So I'm kind of seeing it the same. His ego might be bigger than I dealt with in on Rise because he won in Black Ops 4, he won in MW. So he'll probably be more vocal against me, but I'm fine with that. Like I'm obviously a guy that in a toxic environment, as long as it's like for a good reason and not I hate you reason, it's because it's like I love you. I want you to be the best player possible, which
Yeah.
is what I like from my teammates. If I'm messing up, if I'm underperforming, I want my teammates to yell at me and be like, "Hey, like I know you're better." That's how I view it. It's me yelling at you because I know you can do better. If I think you suck, I'm probably not even gonna yell at you. I'm about like, wow, you just suck. Like
Yeah.
I don't see myself making you better because you just suck. Like if I'm yelling at you, I've always told my teammates this. If I'm yelling at you, it's because I think you can do better, not
Yeah.
because I think you suck. It's just I'm trying to make you the best player possible. So that's for as far as gunless. So I think he'll be good. Sam, I haven't teamed with since Black Ops 3, so I know he's like a different man. Obviously has more championships under his belt. But again, I think chip on his shoulder.
I, I
He
mean,
didn't have after his Black Ops 4 season, right? Two championships, runner up at champs, and then MW. I don't even think they played in a final. So it's just like he wants to get back to being called the best, right? When you get called the best, and then you just like a lot of people were still saying he was the best just because of the stats he was putting up. But
yeah.
I know he believes he wasn't the best player in MW or like even the best AR, right? So when you're the best and you stop getting called the best, you want to get back to that point.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I am with Sam, which I know he's just going to work hard and you know what to expect from him.
Yeah.
Shoot straight as hell, get lots of kills. And Preston's the one I haven't teamed with. Obviously, I've heard stories of like his mental game and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I think he's gonna do like his best. He's gonna just work hard and try to prove again that he can do it without his brother. Like I think that's his biggest chip on his shoulder, right? People just say,
Yeah.
"Oh, the only reason he's a pro is because of our cities," and he just gets carried by his brother, put on by his brother, teams with his brother.
Yeah.
So I know he wants to prove all those people wrong, and I think teaming with a player like me will be good for him, where he doesn't have to just go in first. I've already told him like you're not gonna be the guy that just throws your body in first every single time. Like
Yeah. Well,
we're gonna,
it's 4v4 now as well, right? So it's
yeah,
slightly different.
yeah. So I'm like, you're gonna be a slayer. I've seen you shoot very straight. I've seen you go off and have multi kills and you're a beast. So don't feel like it's on you to run in front of Pierce and Sam every single time. Like I'll be there to do that too. So when it comes to like stats, because I know that's another thing, right? Pristini point nine or Pristini point this. Like have a feeling as long as we work hard, he's gonna be putting up 1.0s. And a lot of people like you said, it's 4v4. Like if you go look at our tournaments in World War II, it's not like Tej was putting up some crazy stats. Me and
Yeah.
Tej just worked really well together. Like I think it's kind of like a recency thing where the last thing people remember Tej for World War II was dropping 58 on TK in that London docks. But it's not like he was doing that the whole year. Like
Yeah.
so it's just when it comes to 44 and if it plays out the way I think it is, your subs just have to do the right thing and throw up point nines. If they throw up a 1.0, you're winning. Like that's how I always viewed it. If your subs are throwing up or your entries throwing up a 1.0, you should win the tournament
Yeah.
as long as your ARs are getting their kills. So
It's crazy how much KD is like
yeah,
influential on everything nowadays, and I hate it. But also at the same time, it's very difficult sometimes to measure intangibles, right?
Yeah.
But there's,
But,
I mean,
like, I think it was Theory at like Nola threw up a .7 and won the tournament. A .7 and won the
wow.
tournament. So like that's what I'm saying. If it just plays out how I think it would with being smart, like we'll be fine.
Yeah.
And the personality clashes and stuff like that, I think we'll get over it. We're all grown men. We all want to win. We're all vets, right? That's another point. People say like, oh, they're just a team of vets. Like, where are the youngins in this? And we just have trust in ourselves.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, it's 4v4 as well, right? It's going to be
yeah,
less of that, like hurling yourself around, maybe. Well, we haven't got enough of Cold War
yeah,
competitive to
yeah.
figure it out yet, but
We'll see.
there's a few things actually you said that I need to go back over because the most obvious one, the first one, the conflict resolution. Now, I have never really spoken to Nubsy very much, but obviously he's currently the head coach as far as I'm aware. Has there been any talk of conflict resolution or ways to manage potential issues within the team? Have you spoken to your teammates about this, by the way? Like, have you said, hey, look, obviously we've all, we're all very passionate. We all know our shit. There is a possibility that at some point I may call you some very unpleasant names. How do we go about fixing this before it becomes a big issue?
Nah, I think right now, post like all of us signing, we haven't really talked to each other much. I think people like I know Sam just went to Florida to go to like
Yeah.
Disney and like Universal with his girlfriend. I drove down to Florida to visit my fiance's family. So we're kind of just letting each other do their own thing right now in the offseason. Hasn't really touched on anything really, other than like I said previously, more like, all right, let's team, blah blah blah. But once we sign contracts, it's been our group chat's been kind of quiet, just letting people do their own thing. But
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have that talk like when it comes to like scrim time, like, hey, like Joey, we respect you enough or whatever. When you think things are getting out of hand, just like tell us to be quiet or something. I mean, I'm sure there's gonna be times where you're like, hey guys, shut up. And we're like, no, you shut up. Like I've done that with Mark 110 times on splice with Temp. Like he'll try to interject and we're like, no, no, no. Like we just have to hash this one out. Just let this one rock. But there's ones that will probably have him stop, and then there's ones, like I said, where I think it's best to just let everything out. Just don't bottle in your emotions because I think that's when like tension starts to rise, and you're just sitting there mad. And instead of you telling me, you're telling someone else, and I
Yeah.
don't want that. Like that's what happens, right?
Yeah.
In
No,
the clashing.
I agree. Like I said, I've always felt like that I've always said some of the better pro players who've always been kind of said, oh yeah, they're a great teammate, are the ones who can point the finger at themselves first and not, go to speak to somebody else and say, hey, that guy's shit and he's letting us down.
Yeah,
Especially in this current format, it's not as easy to get a good sub nowadays, or a good transfer, or a good roster change. You have to
yeah,
realize that it's going to be more like, okay, we need to work with these players. I can hate him as long as we can work together and get chips. And the other thing I was going to bring up, you brought this up, like it still boggles my mind how storyline that Seattle Surge is this year. A franchise who became the laughing stock of teams last year, 100%.
yeah,
Octane, who started the year, like I said, I did a draft start of the year, and he was the number one draft, like I thought he would be, consistency over the years. Who this year, like you said, it must have been he got fined more than he won in prize money, which is
yeah.
insane.
Well, I tweeted out. I think it was like 2 weeks ago. I won a World War II throwback, and that was
Yeah,
more money than I made in MW.
yeah, which is
It
crazy.
was $200.
Which is great. And then obviously, you spoke about yourself and your two teammates. Every single one of you has something to prove, as well as Octane. Pristini wants to play with that brother. You got benched last year, and so did Gunless. So this Seattle Surge team is going to have lots of eyeballs on it because every single aspect of your team right now is seeking redemption or seeking
Yeah.
to prove a point or has a chip on their shoulder. And that for me is incredible because I hope CDL's probably doing this anyway, but people keep a very close eye on it because essentially it's very easy for players like yourself or players in this situation to have their stock absolutely destroyed. Somehow Octane's stock didn't fall because he was still putting up good numbers very much, but
Yeah.
obviously it's different from being, the what a lot of people consider the best or most consistent player to bring into the next season to, oh, he was on the worst team of
Yeah.
the year, bar
That's
none.
also that's also has to do with like pros though. Like we know how to put stock on players, right?
Yeah.
Like fans, for example, like a lot of fans are like, what the hell did why how is Looney on a team? He played for 3 events, dropped .8s, and somehow he's teaming with Octane or whatever the case is. It's just because
Yeah.
pros have a different view. Like me, I am mind blown beyond belief that Slack's not on a team. Beyond belief. Like he should be he should have been sought after as soon as Seattle said they weren't signing him,
Yeah.
like by everyone, like Florida, LAG, whoever needed a team, they should have just hit up Slack. Like, so pros just view player stocks way different than um than fans, but
Do you think that's a big problem though? Because we know, and obviously, like if you're an owner of a franchise, you kind of have to balance expectations as well. Because you know if you make a bad signing as an owner, fans gonna be down your neck. Like they're gonna be just full of it. We've seen it, right? Teams haven't announced shit, and teams are going at people like Paris, at London. Like they're just getting so much vitriol coming down the timeline.
yeah,
They're probably worried about it. Do you ever like sit there as a pro and be like, I don't know how? Because Crim's came to your defense, I believe. I think it
yeah,
was Crim.
yeah,
Crim said,
yeah.
"Hey, man, you
Prim's the
guys
one
need
that
to,
said it.
yeah, you guys need to back off because he's better than any of you are giving credit for." Do you ever worry about that dynamic though, that fans start dictating teams?
Yeah, I mean, like kind of you said, they're just very vocal, right? But the internet gives everyone a voice, so they can just simply tweet at Seattle Surge. Wow, I can't believe you picked up Looney. And then like, who knows? Like after the first event, if I underperform a little bit or something like that, I drop a point 0.8 or point 0.9 and whatever the case may be, and they have 100 fans tweeting them, that could influence them. I don't know. Like that's probably another issue, right? Is they just keep getting tweets like this player sucks. How is he still starting? How is this guy
Yeah,
starting? How is this guy starting? And they're just like, oh my god, like does this guy suck? Like, should I bench him? Like, you don't know the influence of everything, especially with like GMs right now. I don't know all the GMs, but or some might not even have
yeah.
GMs.
Some are
So,
more forward facing than others. I think some of them are
like
like,
a lot of the people that are in power don't know much about COD. So it's just like those are also the people that are making decisions. But I think right now it's kind of like you said, it's like the growing pains of the franchise, and still players like now, like for example, with JCap retiring, like he should be in a management position where he has so much experience, he has tons of experience, and
yeah,
when the team's underperforming and he's a GM, he'll know like, okay, we probably need to bench this guy, or nah,
yeah.
trust me, we'll get through this. He brings a lot to the team. Like once players like that and like Karma start getting into these management positions, I think organizations will be more comfortable just putting their trust in them. I think Hector said it. He's just like right now, players have all the control. I know nothing about COD. Players have all the control, and it's like until I get someone that I trust to make those decisions instead of the players, which again I'm sure he'll trust like a player like Cap and Karma, but and then it'll put them at ease from all the fan backlash and stuff like that.
I wonder if there's like a new position that needs to be considered for Call of Duty because this has been in my mind recently. I've had this debate more than once, right? And it's about coaches and managers that it's not necessarily always going to work if you have a pro player step into either of those roles because of things like the way you manage people, the way you look at stuff, your organization. Very different from just playing and knowing the game, especially considering the game changes every year. So what you did know starts to become out of date the longer you've been doing it. I wonder if something like a consultant or something, like more players should be going into a consultancy role saying, hey, 6 months, sign me up. I'll sit outside your power structure, but I have all the inside scoop on the players. I can help build a team. I can help manage stuff. I can help your coaches, your managers. I will sit and I will just get it done. And I'll be honest with you, I think the majority of franchises could use a position like that. Something where you don't have to go, right, you're a new head coach, no coaching experience, right? Just because you're an ex-pro player, or management, you don't know what decisions they're going to make. And then that's a good way to assess them as well, right? You have a consultant who's doing very well in the organization front. Wow, fantastic, great. Let's bring you in full time because that way we can develop you. And it's something that we've also covered is there isn't a ton of talent out there, like you said, who have these niche backgrounds of no Call of Duty like the back of the hand, but also can do these other jobs. Like, who are you picking? It's why we don't see a big turnover of staff at the moment because no matter how bad you did last year, who's going to replace you? Who is there to replace people yet? We don't know.
Yeah. But also, to your point, Toronto Ultra actually they hired a head coach that had nothing to do with COD. Like
Yeah, I heard
Marky
this.
B
Yeah,
was not the actual head coach; he was a strategic coach, I think. And that head coach was strictly put in to provide structure, to provide a schedule, and things like that. So, kind of like you said, not always going to be like a pro player, and it probably all shouldn't be a pro player, right? It just depends on how they are and stuff. Because sometimes coaches can't provide a structure because they don't know how, right?
yeah.
All the coach can tell you is be on time. But like as far as like our head coach, he was really providing a structure for the time he was with us. I think he left like around COVID time, but It's like to your point, like sometimes pro players probably shouldn't be in that job depending on what is the ask of it. Because
Yeah.
I mean, we're just players, right? A good chunk of us, I'm sure, can't sit here and actually get a team in line more than just hey rotate. So,
Yeah, yeah, I fully agree. It's so interesting to me, and it's something I probably talk about far too fucking much. People who view the channel know that I end up talking about it a lot because I'm very passionate about it. I think we don't know, right, if the greatest Call of Duty coach is a current player at the moment. They could be. They could actually be a better coach than they ever were a player, just because of their
yeah,
personality and the way they think through things. Right?
yeah,
And we could, you could have, Crimsix, for instance. I'll take Crimsix just as an example, right? Obviously, reputed as the greatest player of all time, most winningest player, huge prize pool, right? Everyone, I don't think you'd find people say, oh, he couldn't be a coach. But for all we know, it could be a dreadful coach. Probably not, but
yeah.
could be. Could be a
No, yeah.
shockingly bad coach, right? You wouldn't suspect
Especially
it. Like,
especially like the first like year or two. So I
yeah,
use now because I talked to Cap about this. I'm like, bro, like the first year of coaching after being a player has to be the worst. Has to be. And it's funny, I said this before B Sport announced that he's coming back. And I guarantee you it's for the reason that I was telling Cap. If you go coach a team and you're just sitting there watching these players, you're gonna get the thought, I can still be playing.
I have
And
heard that is the
that's
reason.
exactly I guarantee that's the reason why B Sports like, you know what, bro? I'm coming back to playing, bro. I can still compete. Like it could have been different decisions where he didn't get a franchise spot to, like I said, hey, we have to make financial decisions for ourselves. He's like, I'll just coach, and then now the opportunity comes to where you can play again or whatnot. But
Yeah,
I personally feel like the first like year or two of coaching post player, if you had lots of success as a player,
yeah.
is going to be the worst.
Oh yeah, I'll be honest with you. Like, I don't know how much I can say, but I kind of reached out to find out, and it wasn't from him actually. I was like, hey, what's going on with baseball? And from what I was telling, he was not appreciating coaching because I think it is difficult for a player to transition. Right,
Yeah,
when you're a player, you go in, you play, you try to get the best. It's competitive heat. You're like, yeah, I can do this. If you're a coach, it's like, well, it's work, right? It's just hard work. You're gonna have conflicts. You have to watch VOD. You're not gonna be playing. A lot of the perks of being a player get taken away, but you're still doing the grind.
yeah,
But you don't get to
yeah,
influence any of it. So yeah,
yeah.
that's yeah. I don't know exactly what happened with him, and I'm sure I'll speak to him at some point and get the official line on why he's gone back to playing. But it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
That
Um,
was the reason. Yeah,
yeah.
if I'm a betting man, I'll put my money on that.
Yeah, me too. Me too as well. Let's talk a little bit then about the franchise league because obviously it's a big change and a lot of people have weighed in with their opinion. I'd like to hear yours. Now, I will preface this, but I have heard rumors about possible changes for next year, so we won't go into those. But home stands and stuff. How did you feel about the way the year was laid out?
Um, honestly, Minnesota changed my view on what I had going in initially.
Okay.
Like Minnesota was like an event where I was just like, wow, like maybe a home crowd is gonna make a difference. Maybe it's not gonna be an optic crowd every single event like we've had before. Like
Yeah.
Minnesota came out and those fans were cheering for Rocker. Like they might have still been like if it was they might have still cheered for Huntsman or whatever when they played. But I guarantee you, if it was Rocker versus Huntsman, they would have been on Rocker's side, regardless if they were like optic fans or whatnot. It felt that way. So I'm like, it changed my view right then and there. Obviously, after that was London, which London's always going to cheer for the Europeans. Like you guys are special when it comes to that. Like that's just because you're gonna cheer for your region.
Yeah, regardless, it doesn't
Yeah,
matter how bad they
yeah,
are, how much
yeah,
it is like
exactly.
they're
So like
getting
that
cheered
that was
for.
different. And then Atlanta again, obviously gonna cheer for FaZe because they're a good ass team. So like they're gonna go to bat for their home team. And then obviously home series. I think LAG. I'm not sure how that went when it comes to like crowd and stuff because we weren't there. Uh, so I don't know how I would have gone, but it looked like it was going to that direction where like, wow, like Scump's not always gonna have the home crowd advantage, like because that was tough to play against. It was very fueling and gave you a reason to beat them. But I think in terms of homestands, I believe that it was going in a direction that I didn't predict,
No,
and I like
agree with you there. I was pleasantly surprised
yeah.
by the engagement of home crowds, and obviously COVID kind of put paid to it, but I kind of want to see how it plays out. Like if we can get consistent crowds, home crowds on each event. Like obviously, if you're an away player, not going to be pleasant walking through the crowd.
Yeah.
Being kind of cheered against, but for a lot of players, obviously, like you said, the old optic effect. You were going against a the team that was cheering against you anyway. It kind of leads on to my next point as well, right? Recent news, and I thought this was super interesting. It doesn't seem to have really been picked up a lot by the community. Crimsix went in about toxic fans recently on the Eavesdrop
Yeah.
podcast, and he actually doubled down on the Reddit. And it's something I wanted to explore further, but I want to get your kind of point of view on it, right? With fans in Call of Duty, do you think there is a problem with some toxic fandoms? And I'm not singling out Huntsman or Optic here, but like, what do you experience day to day, timeline wise, social media wise, whenever you play or don't play over the years? Because for me, I think it's always difficult to take an accurate snapshot because sometimes it's just hostility on the
Yeah.
Like if you win a map, it's great. If you win a map against a popular team, you get smoked anyway. If you do badly, then it's like the worst thing in the world looking at your timeline. But what's been your
Yeah.
experience with it?
Well, I mean, being a role player was I've seen it, right? I've seen the toxicity, especially um back in what was it? Back in like Black Ops 3 and IW. Well, back in like Black Ops 3, since me and Damon kind of played the same role. It's funny. I always ask Damon about this. He hated me. He like hated me. So like and I had an ego in the beginning of Black Ops 3. Obviously, it was my first time winning. We were considered the best team, and so I had that ego. Obviously, Optic always had that reputation of being like so good online, and with our success in the beginning of the year, I would be vocal about it. Like, holy, like, bro, like you guys are just so much better. And then it was funny because we went to stage one and they went up 3-0 on us, and I'm just like, oh my, I kid you not. We went down 3-0. Me and Nick are just looking at each other, classic. And in my head, I'm just thinking, I'm about to get roasted by all these freaking fans. Like, just about to get drilled.
Oh,
And then we brought it back and whatever, made it close. And honestly, after that, which the main reason I got positive feedback, because it was just like day one. At the end of the day, they won. So they're like, good games, man. Y'all fall hard. So like, there are I won't group them. There are like the good fans, but you'll definitely get a lot of bad tweets. Just regardless. But I mean, I think it's not just Call of Duty though.
no,
Like
I
we're
think
not in
yeah,
other we're not in other I know a lot of people go like hard for like, oh, like the Optic fans are the most toxic and whatnot. I think it's just more so because there's more of them, so there's more
yeah,
tweets. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
But it's funny when how you mentioned Krim, because as pros, we all like respect them now, and we're just like, you see the other side because you was blinded by it for 5 years. Like
Yeah.
first he was the villain, right, against them in the cold AG dynasty. Then he joins them, and I think those like 4 years. Which during those 4 years, credit to him, he would still block Optic fans. Like he has them blocked. Like he would say that he's like, what? Like I still block these guys. If they tweet me something dumb, I'm blocking them. I don't care if they support me. Like get out of here. But I think now that he's on the other side again. He sees it and he goes to bat for us. Like you said, he went to bat for me. Uh Obviously the Carson situation, just anything. He's been fighting now for
Yeah,
like
he's
for our
he's he's
side because
coming
he
out
sees it.
hard recently.
Yeah, like so as pro players, we respect him for that. We're like, it took you a while. We've been seeing this for 6 years, but now that you're on this side and you see it. But like I said, I think all fan bases probably have some toxic people. That's just
Yeah.
how it is. It's the internet. It's easy to just say. I mean, it's what the saying is, right? You tweet me that you hate me and hope I whatever vulgar stuff, but you're that guy that also shows up to the scuff booth and asks for my autograph. Like it's
Yeah.
just the internet, and it's easy for people to just say hateful things. And a lot of the times, you're like, let me test this one. Hey man, that was rude. Oh, bro, I didn't expect a response from you. I love you, Looney. It's like, yep, you see, like this is what I'm talking about. Like that's what I'm telling you. A lot of them, you just reply to them, they probably instantly become your fan or something like that. They're just also looking for a reaction out of you and stuff like that. So
I had the opposite experience recently. Actually, someone tweeted me some dumb shit on my timeline, so I quote tweeted them. I was like, "Yeah, this is stupid." They were not happy I did that. They were like going mad trying to DM me. They actually went onto my YouTube and left comments on like every video, just cussing me out.
Okay.
Like, and it wasn't
He
like
was
copy and paste. It was like just new shit. Like you're fucking useless. And I was like, oh god. I was like, this guy clearly is no longer a fan of mine. But
Yeah.
here's an interesting one with regards to this. Right? Is it worse? As just for you wise, is it worse to have that fan feedback just saying horrible things, or if you get criticized by someone in the spotlight? I don't know. Say I made a video, or say on the desk you get slated, or whatever. What kind of gets to you more?
I think desk. I think as pro players, we've always complained about the desk.
Uh-huh.
Um, that's not just like casters, anyone, because they have such a big like popularity, and like they can just say whatever they want, and like I feel like
Yeah.
fans just echo it. They just echo it. We've complained about it so many times. I mean, last year the situation with Seattle, right? They're just like Sam needs help, Sam needs help. So what happened? The fans just it couldn't have been like, it could have been bandwagon, it could have been people having their own opinions, but it was just like, I think that's where Slack's stock went down, or apathies, or someone, because you just get bashed into the ground, right? Like that's what I'm saying with Slack. It's like he's viewed as like toxic now, or whatever the case may be, just because of his tweets when he was just like, "Oh, people asked how scrims are going," and it was like a screenshot of like Panda and Proto getting smoked or whatever, which was just like a joke. But obviously, fans viewed it differently. But I think that annoys pro players more than just like pros tweeting you.
Is there a way to fix it
It's
though?
just
Like, what is the correct way to do it? Because I've always maintained, and like I think it's probably obvious to anybody who's ever known me or watched me. Like, I've always said I will be harsh. I'm never harsh for sakes of clickbait or tweets. I don't really care. I've always said if I can defend my point from a logical point of view, I will say whatever the hell I want about a player.
yeah,
Because in my mind, you can't have not every player is good. Obviously, it's
yeah,
always in context, right? You're all professionals are the top 0.001% of players, right? But in context, I even said it a few weeks ago. I said most of them are in that mediocre section, right? The 90% of players fit within the spectrum of not being gods at some point. But what is the correct way to do it? Because
oh yeah,
if I said something negative about a player, like sometimes a more popular player especially can just body me on the timeline, regardless of how correct I am. Right? I could be I
oh
could be
yeah,
100% bona fide correct, right? And they can just say you don't know anything, shut up. And it's difficult. It is difficult, even an educated person myself who's been around for a decade of Call of Duty to express an opinion when maybe I don't have it, maybe it's speculative, true. To bring criticism to players, because I think it is a necessary thing in Call of Duty. You have to bring players down in terms of reputation to allow them to be built back up, to create storylines. Because if it's just two good teams going against each other and they all could be good, it'll be great fun. Like, how do I differentiate whether or not somebody's having a redemption? Like I said, see, your team's a great example, right? If you guys had all done, okay last year and hadn't had all these storylines, it would be a less interesting team. You would have a less interesting storyline for people
yeah.
to engage with.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Obviously, Nameless is on the desk. He's been on the desk now for like 3 years, I think.
Yeah.
So he's the one that has obviously like a line of communication with pros because he's been a player. We've talked about it with him a lot, and he just like, it's just tough. Like in reality, kind of like you said, not all of you guys are good,
Yeah.
like to that standard at least. So like at some times we're gonna have to call whoever's underperforming trash. But like, I don't know. It is hard. I understood it from talking to him more and stuff like that about it, where like sometimes you have to just say it how it is. And that's kind
Yeah.
of like how he defended the Seattle Surge thing, when they're just like bro, like they don't have an SMG star. Yeah, apathy has been one in this past, or slacked and stuff, but currently like they're not going they're not putting up those numbers, or even just like the high kill games, even if you go like a 40
Uh-huh.
or a 40, and obviously with a 1.0, like they just weren't doing that. And I think that we felt like that's what they lack. And I'm just like, yeah, I guess I can see that. It just sucks because, like I said, the way fans view that is, all right, this guy sucks forever now type thing. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like,
I think
so
Nameless
that's where
makes
it's
me
just
laugh because
tough.
Nameless gets it from both angles, right? He gets it from pros and fans,
Yeah.
regardless
Yeah.
of what he's. And I've defended Nameless in the past, right? Because it's not easy to be on a desk. I think the way the desk have been done over the last couple of years could do it with a workaround. Like they've been kind of trying things out, and it's still not hitting quite correctly for me, regardless of the talent on there. Like I said, I think Nameless is come on leaps and bounds in terms of like breaking stuff down for the community and trying to get
Yeah.
his point across and be who he is. And you can't. I think the biggest thing for Ant, right, is you can't really knock him because he's been a pro player and he's been doing this for so long. Like, who else is going to do it to that level? And I'm sure anybody else who steps in that role is going to get absolutely flamed as well at the same time. But it's just
Yeah.
curious to me, like how do we improve that and go forward and allow people to go, hey, this guy is bad, and not just get it all clickbait on Deserto one day, because
Yeah.
that's what
It
happens,
is.
right?
Yeah,
Uh,
it is tough. Like I said, I think another thing that like pro players complain about, or just like when it comes to deaths and stuff, and like player opinions, is just not knowing the play that you're critiquing or the game that you're critiquing, what actually went on. So we've always talked about like when CTF was a thing.
Yeah.
We would hear a lot like, "Why didn't he just run the flag? Like, he had the open lane." And we're like, "But does that player really know that that lane's open?" You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
you have all the information. You don't know what information the players have. And I've seen that happen a lot, whether it's an S&D play or stuff like that, where if you just view the game from a codcaster's perspective, and that's the only way you ever view the game, and you always just have every bit of
Yeah.
information, you don't know what's going on in the player's head. We don't have all that information. We're not playing with X-ray vision. And sometimes, and I'm not saying all the time, sometimes a caster will just hit like a statement as a fact in
I've done
that
that.
said play, which just makes that player just look like he's just the dumbest player on earth.
Yeah.
But you just don't know what's going on in the comms or anything like that. Like
Yeah.
when I was doing my hindsights, for example, going in depth, I would always say, yeah, it looks like this player made the bad play, but you don't know what happened in the comms. You don't know if his AR told him, hey, push this out for me, and it didn't end up working out and it wasn't his fault or whatnot. So I think that's something you can take into account. I understand not taking it into account into every single play because then it just gets like you can't just always give the guy the benefit of the doubt, but it just kind of sucks when it wasn't that player's fault and it's just like put on him for, like, for example, Pristini, right? In the round 11 against Optic, when he
Yeah.
like hit the left on Arklov and insta died. How do we know that they didn't tell him to do that? And it's just like,
Yeah.
well, they saw it. It
Yeah.
could have been
It's
like,
difficult. It is.
and I tweeted him right after like they won, and you just see him go like I'm just like, bro, I know what was in your head when you were dead. Like you're
Yeah.
just thinking like every single Huntsman fan is about to roast me for getting blooded on round 11. But again, you don't know if Formal or RCs or someone
Yeah.
told them, hit that, like just go. And like, so it's just one of those situations, like I said, where that I think has to taken into account a
Yeah.
little bit more. And Pristini's not a shot caller. May have
Yeah.
he have called that play himself, but I know someone probably told him to do that. And it's just unfortunate they preempted him, they killed him. Luckily, like I said, they won it regardless. But
Yeah.
the situations like that, like I'm not saying it could have, but they could have gone to the desk and they're breaking down that play. Like, yeah, I don't know why Pristini did that. And it's just like, and now fans are like, oh my God, Pristini's trash. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I knew it.
I
So,
think that's the reason I brought up Ant, right? Because I've obviously worked with Ant for a while as well, so I see both sides. But I know for a fact that he's been discussing stuff in the green room about it. I've seen
yeah.
him make notes. Like people don't understand the amount of work it goes into going
Oh,
on there
yeah.
and giving an opinion on anything, right? Because that's what you're paid for, right?
Yeah.
If you are on these situations, if you are a caster or a host or an analyst, I've done it. They do not want you to sit there and be a nodding head because then people say that the desk or the casters are boring as shit, and it
Yeah.
is your job you are working for. Like if I do a hot take, and I try not to do hot takes that are always terrible, but I've done it. I've called shit before, and
Yeah.
so a player's going, "This is fucking stupid. You're wrong." And I'm like, "Well, explain to me how it's wrong, so I don't do it again." Because I can only cast what I can see, and obviously I do see more. And it's something like I've always preached about, like S&Ds, for instance, right? I said the first thing anybody should be doing when looking at an S&D is trying to figure out what information both teams know. It's super obvious as well, right? If you ever watch an S&D, and you'll see this, Looney, like you've got to keep an eye on what the players are seeing. Like what crosses
Yeah.
have they seen? What shoulders are they picking?
What information they have.
Yeah, because nothing happens on that map until the information has come through. And it's why some rounds you can predict a team is going to go A or B, simply because well, they've tried this situation, they know roughly where the distribution of the enemy players are. Now they're going to try and switch it. And that's how you predict shit. It's not going, oh, I've watched them play this a million times. It's what have they seen? What are they going to see? And that's how they react. And obviously that's something that it's not always easy to get across to people watching casually, because they just go, oh, they keep going A, they should just keep going A. It's fucking obvious. I'm like, well, no, not really, because they don't know what's going to happen.
It's funny you say that because in that same exact round 11, I saw a lot of people too, like, you guys should have just gone A after you killed Pristini. And it's like, they don't know that Chicago just over rotated. Like, especially in a 5v5 atmosphere, like 4 players can still stop a push. Like, what if they did rotate?
Easily.
What if, like I said, like a lot of players, like you don't know the information they had. One, they didn't have Optic didn't have anyone on the left side of the map, so they didn't know of anyone there. How do you know that it wasn't an all-out rush on all angles of the map and Pristini rushed the left side and Envoy rushed the right side and he went down your trenches and all of a sudden he's on your side? So if you cut through connector, he just shoots you guys all in the back. And then it's like, why'd they go away? They should have just committed B. Like I said, I've seen a lot of tweets like that. Like they should have just gone A or whatnot. Like the one play I think you can critique is it did take them too long to kill Scum.
Yeah.
That's like the one thing that I think Optic will not argue with you. But as far as like you guys should have gone A, like they don't have that information that Chicago just over rotated all through spawn.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like I said,
And
one
it's
of those things
it's
where
tense, right? Like that situation is
yeah,
not like
exactly.
like even like veterans like yourself, right? In that situation, you're sitting there going, like, everybody's trying to figure out what's happening at the same time while not giving away kills. The time is going down. I've said it a few times, right? Take S&D, for example. The clock will kill teams if they hesitate, but they'll hesitate for very good reasons. They don't have the information. They either have to make wild plays, go, right, fuck it, just go.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
we're just gonna
And a
go.
Dark Love
Yeah.
on minute 30. Like, if
Yeah.
you rotate A and there was some people there was some resistance, and you couldn't take the bomb site, it's just like, well, now we can't go back to B. It's Arklov peak. Like, this rotation might be a little too long. So it sucks, which, like I said, I understand it though. I mean, like you said, you have to make a brand for yourself. You have to be able to take those hot takes and take it in the chin.
Yeah,
You know?
100%, 100%.
Sometimes you're gonna get proven wrong, which I know a lot of cashers and desk players always say, like, listen, you guys are gonna get O2'd or you guys are gonna win a match at this event. Prove me wrong. It's like, okay, like that's fair.
Yeah, no, 100%. Let's do questions from the chat. So if you're watching,
Yep.
put questions in the chat because I still have a few to come. So first of all, let's talk Cold War. Super relevant. Betas this weekend. You've obviously played the alpha. I'm just double checking. Yeah. What did you think? Really easy question. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think guns were good. Right, you had I started experimenting with the Uzi a little bit more after the 74U. I like the gunplay. I think obviously balancing it will be fine. I think ARs were kind of not as happy. I think the beta was kind of sub dominant. It could just be maps and stuff like that, but it did seem like it was sub dominant. But my worry currently is just the laziness when it comes to wild cards. Just if you just throw on a perk greed, it gives you 6 perks. You throw on, what is it, like the gunfighter, you get 8 attachments. That's my biggest worry, I think, and especially having flak and tack in the same thing. I think you need to add like a third viable perk in there to make people decide between flak and tack. That's kind of like my biggest worry is just the laziness behind behind perks. I think that having a good perk system is huge for competitive. You shouldn't, in my opinion, you should be risking a lot to counter utility.
Yeah.
Like, my biggest example is Black Ops 2, right? I think what makes a good COD is having 3 base perks that like you're kind of like forced to run.
Yeah.
Black Ops 2 had dexterity, that was kind of like the forced perk 3. Toughness was a forced perk 2, and then like lightweight was kind of a forced perk 1. But and if you didn't run lightweight, you felt it, right? Like you felt slow. And then you had flak in perk 1, where you had to choose. You had, I think it was hardwired, so you don't get impede in perk 2, and then you had tac mass in perk 3. But then you also had extreme conditioning in perk 3. So like, I think that perk system also helped Black Ops 2, and it's very underrated. Where it's like, okay, if I want to counter a nade, I have to run either perk 1 greed, but then that leaves you vulnerable for a stun, and then like vice versa. Or if you just go super soldier, which I know like Proofy did and Goonjar did, but they're slow.
Yeah.
So, like, they can't move around the map. So like, if you, for example, if you win a rotation and they're running that class, they have 1 push. Like them individually have 1 push. So I think a perk system is very underrated, and for them being lazy and just not only just adding a perk greed and just saying, hey, you have 6 perks. We'll see how it plays out. I just think you have to have like perks that we want to use. So I think MW ran into that trouble, right? Perk 2, people were running like Ghost or whatever I think it was like Point Man, which really didn't do much. Like, we were just running it because we had to. So I think you have to have a good perk system, and that was my big catch, I guess you can say, in Cold War.
Yeah,
but
I feel like they always change it up. We get a good thing, and we're like, oh, this is, and for me, it's like problems we've never encountered. It's like, oh, they've changed this. I don't know why they've changed it, but from game to game, and then it's like, oh, now we have a whole new set of problems. Yeah,
things we didn't ask for, and they just think it gets boring. So like, they want to move away from it. They want to do something new. Like, for example, having 80 attachments. Like,
I mean, benefit though, right? And I'll give them credit this year. At least you get stats. Like genuine stats this year, plus 8%, minus 8%, rather than here's a bar that may mean something. I don't know what the fuck.
But we used to have what? Yeah, you rocked bling in Modern Warfare 2 for like 2 attachments or 3 attachments, whatever it was. Like, now it's just like, here, have 5. You can just full stack your gun for free. Like,
it's not really
not having
that
like
big
a
of
pick system.
I'm curious to see what the pro rules are out there, because obviously, like, For me, I always have this problem with Call of Duty betas and stuff, and it's just ruined me for basically enjoying Call of Duty like I used to a decade ago. I'm always like, oh, this pubs is not as fun as I want. I just want to play competitive because I know competitive will be a smoother experience, even if I get dumpstered on, right? I know that I'm going to be less frustrated about being outgunned than I am going to be against something that's in the game that I hate.
Yeah.
It's always curious to me to kind of see how that goes down. Lots of people talking about the movement system in Cold War. How did you feel about the mechanics and how it felt to move around compared to Modern Warfare?
Yeah, so the slide in alpha was like a way to move around, and it was faster. It gave you like a boost when you slid. You were
Yeah.
faster than just a full sprint.
Which is
Which I
mad, by
know
the
they-
way. Just
yeah, which I know they addressed already. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I think I'm not sure if the beta is gonna have the new slide, but I'm sure that's something that hopefully is an open line of communication. Because in Black Ops 4, we tried many times to get them to patch like the slide cancel, and it seems like they couldn't figure it out. So hopefully we figure that out early. Because
Yeah.
again, I don't like having a mechanic that is used every single time to initiate a gunfight.
Yeah.
I don't mind it in certain situations and stuff, but if you're just gonna like, for example, Modern Warfare, obviously slide cancel everything. Like,
Yep.
if you weren't slide canceling to get into a gunfight, like you're dead. And that's where I think obviously there's arguments like that's a skill, that's not a skill. I'm on the side where I don't think it's a skill. I think if a guy's on a head glitch and he outpositioned you, you shouldn't have a mechanic that puts you in favor of that gunfight.
Yeah. No, I can see that argument all
Like,
day.
that's my thing. It actually put like you're at the advantage because of obviously cameraing and all that stuff. But we'll see how the beta plays out when it comes to the slide. I'm always a fan of Dolphin Dive.
Oh, so am I. Why will they not just bring that back? Because you can't really abuse it. Like, there's very little way to abuse a dolphin dive.
When we went back to World War II and we were playing, I was like, wow, like the biggest like input, everyone was like, dude, slide canceling, you have to input a combo into your controller and stuff like that because attachment and stuff. I'm just like, wow, like the biggest combo in World War II is punch diving because it gave you an extra like little length of distance. I'm like, just imagine that. And it's still a good, because I know all these mechanics are put in for movement and like evasion and stuff like that. I'm like, punch diving is a good way to avoid a fight. Like your body's flat, so he has to hit good shots. And like if you go back to World War II, a lot of the time people just punch dive out of a spot, and that's what that's supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
A way to get out of a sticky situation. So
Yeah. It's also one of those mechanics that I think just makes sense for players, for people watching. It's a dramatic thing, right? You are literally diving for cover, for objective, like diving a flag in or doing any of that shit. Like, it makes sense. To see it like that. The sliding thing is mad. Like, I was playing Warzone earlier, and I realized, it's just inbuilt now. I'm just slide canceling everywhere. Because obviously,
I don't know if you saw the video. The people, when you add things like that too, someone is gonna break it, and people already broke it. It was like if you went prone and then slid, like you literally like slid like a snake, like a world
yeah,
out.
I saw that.
It's just like when you add things like this,
Oh
it's
man,
gonna get abused. Like someone's gonna figure it out. That's why I saw Ake's tweet like Shotzi's like punch in every single combo you can, break it now so we can get it fixed. Like just break it now.
I mean, it's happened almost every quarter. I remember G sliding. Maybe you had
Yeah,
to
in Black
get the
Ops
G
3,
slide for timing, right?
if you missed it,
yeah.
if you missed it, you were screwed.
Yeah, you had to call it out as well. Like, that's how bad of a mechanic it was, G sliding.
Yeah.
People were like, oh, it's skill. You got to get it.
I
It's like,
missed
no.
it.
Yeah, if you don't get your G slide off certain things, you miss your timing. That changes your entire S&D round.
Yeah,
It's just
exactly.
it's madness. And I think that's one of the things, like, from a casual thing, because I did a silly thing and saw a tweet on Reddit earlier about. I don't know if you've seen this one. I'll see if I can quickly read it out to you because it is absolutely insane what someone on the Cold War Reddit said, because it hit COD Competitive, and it talks about like the difference between pro players and casual players is that pros get paid. There's literally no other difference, and it's just mental. But that's what you're going against like every year. About expectation. It's for a pro player, you know that you are obviously better than the majority of people out there. It's just how you are supposed to be. Casual players never really understand it, and I've had this experience in my life before. Here we go. I found it. I'll read this out to you because it is insane. Zero difference between a pub stomper and someone who plays for money. I'm sure if you pitted one against the other, the pro player would likely lose. Skill-based matchmaking has been confirmed to be in CODs for years, and no matter how good you think you are, there's always someone better. And people are more sweaty now than ever before. So even if it were toned down, I still think you'd find more sweats than you would previously regardless. So that statement that you would be beaten by a pub stomper, yourself, like, what do you think? Like, because that's what we're going against, right? The casual community not understanding professional Call
Yeah.
of Duty.
I mean, it depends, right? If it's a one-on-one, like I think anything can happen. If you go into Rust, like I'll put my money on a pub stomper, but like, or on a pro player, but like, what makes us pro players is just obviously the talent, the raw gun skill, but it's also
Yeah.
our smarts, right? So like, I'm sure a lot of pub stompers have really good shots.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a dashy out there shooting dummy straight, but like, we're probably be better pub stompers just because we manipulate spawns and stuff like that. You just don't know like the level of a pub stomper. Like for example, I think Satellite is a perfect pub stomp map.
Uh-huh.
Like everyone hated that map, but you can easily spawn trap if you have like 2, 3 good players. Like me and Goon were playing, and we ran into a team. They probably have like a competitive background. I'm not 100% sure because they tweeted us, so they obviously know of us, which
Yeah.
is another thing, right? Most like underage fans are probably all pub stompers, but like they put us in a spawn trap, and it's just like, okay, like they beat us, and then we are like, all right, put the snipers away, let's go hard, and then we beat them. So it's just like it's a situation where pub stompers, that's where I started, for example. I was a pub stomper. I used
Yeah.
to play hardcore S&D in World at War and just drop like 20 plus in S&D in hardcore, like 6v6 or whatever. And just like, so I think that's where you start to, yeah, they're probably not pros yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a pub stomper out there that can beat someone in a pro player in a 1v1. Like,
Yeah. I think it's so interestingly subjective to because everyone talks about Call of Duty. Oh, there's a low skill curve. I'm like, there is a skill curve. It's just hard to define sometimes because I always use examples. Right, there are examples of this throughout Call of Duty history. There are ones where I've seen, like, take Ali A, for instance, right?
yeah,
The Call of Duty YouTuber. I've seen him play against Swan. I've watched him play as I've watched many pro players play, and I know he's pretty damn tasty at Call of Duty before he went over to Fortnite. Like, I know he's decent.
yeah,
Vicstar has come into Warzone tournaments recently and done very, very well,
yeah,
in that competitive environment. So there are people who can do it. I also know that there was a YouTuber event I went to, for instance, where there was one pro player invited, and a PR person had to go up halfway through a match and ask them to put their controller down because the other influencers that were there were getting so badly destroyed that it was making them look bad, right?
yeah,
And that's happened. I
yeah,
also know, like, the last example I give, because, right, take me for instance. I wouldn't even get close to you, and I know this because I can be honest about my skill level. Like, I'm a dead average competitor. I enjoy playing competitive. Well, I didn't realize again till recently how high above normal pub players competitors are, because I went to go play against some of my cousin's friends. So we jumped into their lobby, and I'm just doing very basic things like just strafe jumping around a corner or
yeah.
any of
And
that,
they're
right?
just like,
And they're like, "What are you doing, man? How are you jumping further? Are you cheating?" And I'm just snapping on people, like, because it's just like messing
yeah.
around. Public players don't do that for the majority of time. Like, it's not a normal thing.
Especially if skill-based matchmaking is a thing, they're not getting into those lobbies where people can do that. So that's like new to them, and which is
Yeah,
like mind blowing. Like you said, it's just like if they see a drop shot and they're just like, "What the hell just happened to me?" Like
yeah,
it's just like you said, skill. And I've always said this when it comes to players coming to COD, if they're talented elsewhere, they're gonna be able to shoot straight in COD more than likely.
yes,
If they're comfortable with a controller, if they're comfortable with a mouse and keyboard, like and a lot of these, like, or most of a lot of these players, which I didn't know, have Call of Duty background. Like, oh yeah, I played Call of Duty as a kid. I just went away from it. And I think another big thing where it comes to like pub stompers being there's more players that are skilled is just because since people see esports growing, they're gonna see it's viable and there's just more masses playing than back then, where it
yeah,
was like not as many players playing because more people are getting into video games, more people are grinding, more people are getting better. Like to your point, like players like Pomage, and I think Pomage, if he made the switch way long ago, could be a pro player with how
yeah,
talented he is at obviously being like a quick scoper and stuff like that. You have centering. That's what
yeah,
quick scoping is having good centering. And a good example of players, I'm pretty sure like Folsom back in Black Ops 2 transition Heist, which I think Heist was an absolute monster in Black Ops 2 and in Ghost when he transitioned. Like a lot of people are talented, like you said. where the transition can be made. And like I said, what separates us from everyone else is just our smarts when it comes to playing under a competitive atmosphere.
No, 100%, 100%. And I suppose that leads on to we were talking about the Gears player coming over, right? Mental,
Yeah, mental.
going to like the kickoff that's happened, and I understood both sides of the argument. Like we spoke earlier about sub spots. You can take the risk for a sub spot player like that in case it works out. At the same time, obviously, I can understand why amateurs are upset. They want the shot. They
Yeah.
want to be signed up. They want to be in a big roster. But it also leads on to a question from the chat rather nicely. Somebody asked, King Frederick asked, when evaluating players, people often discuss intangibles. However, what about orgs? What intangibles can orgs provide to players to ensure they're performing the best? Good question.
I repeat it one more time.
So it's coming from Twitter, so you probably can't see it.
Uh,
When evaluating players, people often discuss intangibles, right? The
yeah.
things that outside of it. But people are asking, what about organizations? What intangibles can orgs provide to players to ensure they are performing their best? Like what can orgs do to help a player perform their best that isn't always readily obvious? Like,
Hmm.
obviously they can give you a good salary, they can give you good coaches, but
Yeah.
what else can an org actually do to help a player perform their best that's maybe not super obvious out of the box?
I think it's just providing you with any tools. Like I mean, I know what tools I need to like be the best. So like if you don't know that, it's just like which Toronto Ultra did, which is like provide just tools that you think won't impact it, and like you have to steadily like start believing in it. Like Toronto Ultra made us do a lot of things where we're just sitting here and just like, why am I doing this? Like this isn't gonna make my KD from a 1.1 to a 1.2. And I think it's also just because esports is young
Yeah.
and developed. Like for example, I was watching, I think it was a Legis thing with that he did with like Honda. I think they're sponsored by.
Yeah.
And he did a piece and he talked about like talking to like a psychologist or just like a therapist or just like people that can really get into your mental, which I'm sure professional athletes do, right?
Yeah.
Is just building your mental strength with which he recommended a book that I went out and got. And
I'm interested what this book is now, actually.
right next to my, and again, you won't think this has anything to do with COD, but it's the mental game of poker. So I'm gonna start it. I have it right here on my desk. I got here yesterday, and it talks about your tilt factor, laziness, motivation, confidence, focus, stuff like that. And
I mean, that
a
sounds like
question I
Call of
was
Duty to
actually,
me, right?
yeah, exactly. So I'm like, hey, I'm a tilter. Let me see how I can improve that. So I don't know if, like I said, it's just being more knowledgeable and just growing as a person, right? Being more mature. That's another thing where like the age thing came about, and Abe was like, I can guarantee you I'm a better player at the age of 24 than I was at 18. Why? He's matured and stuff like that, knows how to take criticism. Because as an 18-year-old, you're probably not taking, depending on what kind of person you are, you might not be taking criticism the best. So I think just building knowledge and just educating yourself on a lot of things can help. Like my head coach asked, all right, it's game day. What's your routine? And I'm just like, honestly, like for me, like because he was just saying I think it's called like peak performance.
Yeah.
It's like what do you need to do to make sure you reach your peak when you're competing.
Uh-huh.
And it's just like whether it's eating habits or how much sleep do you need and just things like that. I think if as competitors, as like professionals, we don't really think about that, right? We have like a
Yeah.
routine, but like we don't think
Yeah.
maybe I should do something different and it would help. Like for me, I don't eat on game days. I don't like to. I don't want my stomach. Which Krim talked about this. I don't want my stomach feeling any type of way when I'm playing. So I don't want to have a bad banana or like whatever the case may be. Like I'm not trying to eat some weird meal before I play.
Well,
So I
I
just
mean,
think
that's
those types of intangibles that an org can like bring to you. It's just tools to improve. Like
would
I
you?
think a huge tool that I asked for that I never got on Toronto Ultra is give me uh the maps, the layouts
Yeah.
where I can just mark them up and erase them like transparent things.
Yeah.
So I can like, for example, we can go over a hill. We can just be sitting in a VOD room and I can just
Yeah.
write up all this. All right, they spawn here, 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 here. Like it's just like I said, some players might not know the tools they need. I know what tools I need. I know what can even make my smarts elevate more.
Yeah.
But I think one thing is just like educating yourself on like mental toughness because again, I've said this a million times. All COD pros shoot straight. Yes, there's a dashy, there's a simp, there's a people that shoot even more frequency, but that benefits them in some freak two pieces they get, obviously. Um, and a lot of pro players, once they make a mistake, they know they made it.
Yeah.
They know they made it. Like in practice, our splice team in Black Ops 4, we'd make a mistake, like, yeah, we know. Yeah, we know. Yeah, we know. Yeah, we
Yeah.
know. But we don't actually like apply it to our game so you don't make it again. So I think practicing better, and like again, that comes with like an org can help you that, provide you with a good coach.
Yeah.
Uh and
What?
give the coach the proper tools as well.
Oh,
Because I think that was a
100%.
problem too, is they didn't really give Mark like proper tools. Like it was just like, here's a computer, record.
Yeah. No,
But
I
there's so
agree with
much
that.
more you can give. I think Pac talked about that too. We're just like, sometimes if coaches were given more resources, they can do a way better job.
Yeah. I've all, that's I mean, this is going off tangent. I had loads of fucking follow ups to that. It's people spoke about London, right? London had 3 coaches. I'm like, that's probably about the
Yeah.
right amount at the moment, because that way a head coach can delegate and go over the wider plan and manage people. You got strategic coach and assistant coach who can do a lot of the paperwork. There's probably even more paperwork that can be done that will come in the years where coaches have to fill out, like, here's a development plan, here's what we're doing. We've got an analyst to work out numbers. Like, it's a lot more complicated, and coaching will get a lot more deep. One of the questions I was going to ask you, you said about your stomach. Would you ever, like, if you had a nutritionist come in for Surge, for instance, say, hey, I've worked out your metabolic rate. We've done some tests with you and all this sort of
Yeah.
stuff. Here is a diet plan. Here
Yeah.
is your plan now to. Here's what you do. Run up. Here's scrims. Here's what you eat on game day, or even have a chef. Because obviously, so I heard during the year that some teams had chefs. And one team had a chef, and basically, from what I could tell, drove the guy to insanity because he was preparing lovely dishes and they just wanted chicken and chips constantly, and just basically
Yeah.
were just
Yeah.
ruining this professional chef.
Yeah.
But like, do you think that's something that you would entertain more as time
Yeah.
has gone on?
100%. Like I said, because you have to think about it, right? At an event, most people just like go to Subway. Like, you're at an
Yeah,
event, so you're gonna eat out. It's not like you can cook a meal at your hotel and just like,
yeah,
hey, like if a meal was provided and I knew, and I, like you said, if I've tested it, obviously the first thing you do is test it in practice, right? All right, I'm gonna eat this meal. I'm gonna practice. Um, and it's weird too, because sometimes you have 10 a.m. matches. So what are you eating breakfast, or are you already eating a freaking Subway sandwich? Like, so that's just things that you can test to see how your body reacts, and things like that. Because I personally don't even do caffeine.
oh, okay,
Caffeine, caffeine, like, is, I don't know. One, I don't like feel more energized. I don't know what it is. Um, I just don't do even caffeine. So it's just things, again, you just have to experiment with. But I'll be open to it, like, because again, sometimes we have long days where I probably should eat,
yeah. I mean,
and
fortunately, it's less now, right?
something.
It's
Yeah,
less now.
and I
It's not as
can
bad
eat
now.
something that can hold me through the day and not affect me.
Yeah. I suppose it's one of those things, like back in the day, like especially if you got into like a loser bracket run, there was no chance, there was no time for like nutrition. There
Oh,
was
Seattle.
I'm just gonna just
Seattle run. Yeah.
yeah, just
Well,
throw in food and hope for the best.
what's something also as players we talked about with like Slasher, like I said, the Seattle run, right? Your first match is usually like 10 a.m. on that Sunday.
Yeah.
So we would decide, all right, do we want to wake up and get a scrim, or do you want that extra hour of sleep? And we're like, nah, let's just do the extra hour of sleep because it's gonna be a long day, right?
Yeah.
Like that scrim might help us win the first match, but then who knows? We might run out of gas if we do make it that far.
Yeah, and
Because
everybody's gonna be like
we had
teed up,
yeah,
right? No easy games.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we decided on the extra sleep, and it probably paid off. We went the whole way and had to win 2 best of 5s against CG. So it's just those decisions. Like I said, though, that's not a thing nowadays with the format, but it's
Yeah.
something to think about.
No, 100%, 100%. Like I said, I think it's, for me, it's interesting that obviously franchises are going to look more and more into this. They've got to. Like I heard some teams did, you know, reflex challenges, figure out where everyone's
Yeah,
reflexes are, like develop this sort of shit because people want that developed, right? If you can get faster reflex and there's somebody who knows how to do that and works it out for pro athletes, well, I've known players in the past that have done things for hand-eye coordination. You know, they've had little
yeah,
games on their
no,
phones and
for sure.
stuff and
We
figured
were
it out.
doing that. We had 3D glasses, and we'd get on like our PCs, and there's I think it was called like Visual Edge,
Uh huh.
and we'd get on that, and you'd throw on your 3D glasses, and it was the exact same thing, like just testing your eyes and reaction and all types of thing, memory.
Yeah.
Just things that to constantly train your brain.
Yeah, 100%. Let's move on because I've got a few more questions to
Yep.
do, and obviously I want to let you go because you've got to go
Yeah, no
compete.
worries.
Right, let's have a look. Questions from the chat. Someone asked, "Is it your year?" What a what a great question.
Always an
Um,
answer, yes.
Always an answer, yes. Have you asked Lenny about his thoughts on the bubble? What do you think about a bubble? I mean, it's a massive question, but just kind of
Well,
your service
for
thoughts.
me, just a quick answer would be obviously I was away from home for 6 months, and that did not sit well with me.
Yeah,
Obviously, it had to do with also being benched. I'm sure it would have been different if I was actually competing. But if there was a bubble, I just hope it's not season long. I hope like it's like a two, max like 3 month thing. Because um, big thing is players have houses, players have families. Like you can't just abandon that. I mean, you can. I mean, NBA players did it, so we can't really complain. But I just think as long as it's not a crazy length of time, like if not like all right from February to July or August, you're just gone. It's just like
yeah.
come on,
I think a
like
lot of players would
uh,
go stir
it's
crazy as
just
well.
length.
Like it would
Yeah,
not
it's
go.
just
It would
length.
not go
For me, it's
well.
just length.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's fair. Here's a good question. How do you feel your sub duo with Preston will compete with Simps and Abizis?
Like I said, teamwork is the dream work for me. A lot of people just didn't see me and Tej. But just think about the two teams that won the most, right?
Yeah,
PK and World War II. I know I'm using World War II as an example, but it's the last 4v4 COD. You have to keep in mind, not it's not 5v5. Uh, the first sub duo was Kenny and Theory. A lot of people obviously Kenny carried the weight. After that, it was me and Tej. After that was Kenny and Enable. Like, a lot of people thought what Red Reserve probably had a better sub duo. And what was that at the time? Like Scraps and someone else, or Trey or Joe. Yeah, because Joe moved to Flex at one point. So I think at one point, I think Scraps and Zero, and a lot of people look at them like that's stronger than Tej and Looney, but they couldn't beat us. You can credit that to Gunless, you can credit that to Slasher or whatever. But it's just at the end of the day, as long as me and Preston work well together and set up Am and Gunless,
yeah.
I think we'll be fine. I think teamwork, like I said, always wins. Every pro player will tell you that. I think that what separated Empire from Atlanta.
Yeah, okay. No, I think that's a great answer, actually. I think
Yeah,
that's,
obviously matching up, Shotzi and Hook and Illy are up there with Simp and Abizi, but I can tell you that Simp and Abizi are probably the strongest on paper sub duo, but they're beatable.
no, I mean,
And as long
we've
as
seen
our
that, right?
teamwork is, as long as our teamwork is on point and we work hard, and our chemistry is there, and we put ourselves in good spots, I'm sure if I'm on a head glitch or Preston's on a head glitch, or if we're pre-aiming, we're gonna get the kill. So I just
That,
think it just comes down to our teamwork.
that's fair. Like I said, I think that's a great answer. Like people have been asking it, and you have a reasonable answer to it. Like I think for me, people are always going, oh yeah, they'll never beat this dude. And I'm like, well, you don't know. You don't know until it's tried.
Well,
You don't know exactly what's going to happen in game.
look at Ultra. I think Ultra is a good example of that. They beat Atlanta in that round 11 at the
Yeah,
Toronto home series, and what their sub trio compared to Atlanta's was classic. Was I'm sure you guys don't think is the craziest of players. Kleenex, which that's who you're gonna think is a superstar, and then Bance.
yeah.
Cammy's the flex, so it's just like it was them three against Celium, Simp, and Abizi. So I'm sure a lot of you, or if you can throw Preston instead of Celium, I don't know who was the flex at the time, but I'm sure a lot of you guys would just take Atlanta, but who came out on top
Yeah,
was Ultra, and it's just teamwork. So.
yeah, 100%. Well, I'll do a couple more questions because like I said, I'd like you to go and get ready, and I'm sure you've got stuff to do. What's the best questions from the group? Let's have a look. Who decided to break up after World War II? What happened there?
It was gonna bound to be happen because Gunless didn't really like Slasher. So
Okay, okay, that's fair. I think that's a good quick answer as well.
yeah, and TJ ended up joining Optic like kind of like I think it was like a week or two after Champs before any of us had even spoke. So like I said, I would have done things differently. I probably a day or 2 or 3 days after Champs probably should have typed in the group chat and kind of try to squash all that quicker. Which like I said, I said it previously, it was a mistake, but yeah, that was kind of the big thing.
Okay, last two here because it should be easy.
Yep.
Someone asked, "What do you prefer, open bracket to pool play or the home series?" As a fan, they disliked the home series because much less COD is played. I think it's just scheduling wise. Like, what do you think in terms of like the old way of doing it to the new way?
Okay. So old way. If we did home series, uh, our Seattle run never happened. Like a lot of these runs just don't happen in if it's not open to pool play. So it just depends. Like if it, obviously pool play gives you opportunities, which it gave us an opportunity at Seattle.
Yeah.
Uh, Obviously we started at top 20, but we can still win the tournament, which we
Yeah.
see. Whereas in a home series, you can't. You win, you lose two, you're done.
Yeah.
So, or I think it's two in pool. I think it's win two before you lose two. So
Yeah.
it definitely changes opportunities. Definitely, obviously sucks for AMs. Open bracket
Open
gives
bracket is a
some AMs.
grind, though. It's not fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best placing open bracket team was FaZe in World War II at the first event because them and Echo Fox both said it. I think one got fourth, one got top six. So it's not like AMs have ever like came out and won, but AMs that is a start for them to start showing that they can compete. But it could be a blessing and a curse. And our my example always when it comes to that was GGA Orange, like that spoof mayhem team.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
would run the AM bracket, but as soon as they got to pool play, they just get destroyed. So like I think that's why those players never got a shot. But they would always make it to us, but then we would just smoke them. All right. Where I
Yeah.
think if say they made more noise, won one of the pools, one of the times they got in, or just came out second, or just something, I think those players would have got a shot. But since it just always got like went 0-3, 0-4, or whatever the case, 1-3, I think that it also could hurt you. Like you
Yeah.
have to make sure once you get into there, you prove that you're good, right? Where this system, none of these players had to prove. What Awakening just destroyed on AMS got picked up. Yeah, he ended up proving it, but to get that shot, all he had to do was smoke AMS. But I think it's a lot of people are saying like, oh, it's way harder to make it up, but like now you just beat up on AMS.
Yeah.
You're your own league. You just beat up on AMS and then you get called up. You never have to face us. I don't
True.
want to say us, but you don't have to face pros.
Yeah. No, no, I get that. Like, I fully get that. That's a really interesting take on it as well. Okay, last question. Last question, because
Yep.
I've already had you for longer than I wanted to
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, yeah.
Because,
I'm a talker, so
well, no, mate, honestly, fantastic guest. I love it when you come on and talk Call of Duty. And honestly, I could have you on there for another 2 hours, but I know you're a busy man. This is a great question to end on as well, right? What do you say to entitled amateurs who are complaining that you took their slot? And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with
yeah.
you saying, there was some critique and stuff about, why you've been picked up and Krim come out to defend you. What do you say to these players who are just like, obviously, probably talking mad shit behind the scenes or, going mad about you now in Surge?
I mean, just anyone. If AMs feel any type of way, it depends on the player. Like I know they have strong feelings for mental, right?
Yeah.
Like a sub spot, but as far as like for a starting spot, like if I don't know what AMs would say, because I did just scrim them, and so like from my personal experience, is like I'm not gonna say like they weren't winning maps off me, but like I showed during those 6 months when I was streaming, you can go back, I was smoking them. So for me personally, I think most AMs respect me. And like I said, I followed more. I follow like I think if you go look at my last following, like my last 100, I've just followed a whole bunch of AMs because I was more involved in their scene. I do feel their pain and stuff like that. But personally, I don't think there are many AMs trying to talk shit about me that I shouldn't have a spot. If there are any, well then you're just delusional because I have 6 championships, and Modern Warfare was a bad year for me, but I didn't even get to finish it.
Yeah.
In Black Ops 4, I placed better than any of those M's. So I literally placed third at the first event. I got to a grand finals. So if there's any M's in particular trying to take my spot, like Raiders, I don't know. And I went to World War II and smoked them all. If that World War II throwback had like a stats, I dead ass probably finished that throwback with like a 1.5. Like I showed I
Damn.
can still compete. So
Well,
like
I mean, that's a very good
I'm sure
rebuttal.
that, like I said, I'm very involved in the AM scene, so I'm sure there's not a lot of entitled M's that are specifically saying like I should be on that Seattle roster
Yeah.
over Looney. I know they're more sub spots and elsewhere just because I'm involved. But like I said, I talk like for example, I talked to Sib. I think I saw obviously with that whole thing that happened with like Chicago where he like got suspended for a time. I talked to him.
Yeah.
I think he's next up. I have a good relationship with him, and like I said, I have a good relationship with most of these M's because playing with them and against them for like the last 6 months changed my view on them. So I'm I don't think I think it just sucks for them that it didn't expand and it went back to 4v4. I think a good chunk of those like that Atlanta Academy, like Nagafin Fellows team, Standy, if it expanded and stayed 5v5, they would be on a team. So it just sucks for them, you know. But I just unfortunate that this wasn't their year where they can get that call up. But hopefully next year, if it expands, I can see a lot of these AMs if they just keep tearing up the AM scene come up.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's a very good rebuttal. Like I said, I think it's more the hypothetical amateurs than anything else. But okay, right, let's kind of wrap this up here because first of all, and like I said, you've been a fantastic guest. I'm definitely going to have you back at some point, whether it's for another one-on-one or whether it's for something breaking down hot news or something. It's been great. I could definitely do this for several more hours. You have great viewpoints on everything, man. Honestly. But it's just a difficult one because obviously you've got things to do and people don't want to listen to an 8-hour podcast. But I appreciate it. Any last thing to say to the people listening or watching?
Like I said, I think all the worries are fair. I'm not worried. I'm not mad that people think that this team can fail, but it adds more like fuel to our tank and wanting to prove people wrong. And I hope we can do that, and I hope we come out strong. I've had early success plenty of times of like winning the first event or winning like one of the first like three. So hopefully we just come out strong and just kind of prove them wrong early.
Okay.
That will like kind of lift weight off our shoulders and just cruise through the rest of the year. So just look for us to come out strong for sure.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and I'll be keeping
Yep.
up with you all
Thank you.
season long to figure it out. And thank you to everyone watching as well. Of course, catch us on the YouTube, subscribe, and catch us on all the Spotify and Apple Podcasts and everything else. This has been the Bricecast. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.